Here's a quick video of how I can use the dip switches on a WAGO 750 series coupler controller to set a temporary or static IP address that I know so I can start communicating with that device. So the first thing I'll do is power off the controller. So I'm going to hit the switch here and turn that device off. And then if I zoom in a little closer and I look at the dip switches on this device, the default setting or the factory setting is for all these switches to be pushed to the right-hand side. And what that basically means is that my device is set by software in the web-based management. That's what that 0 equals WBM is essentially saying. But I can use this so that if I don't have a DHCP server or I don't know the IP address of this device, I can flip a couple of these switches so that it gives me an IP address that I know. So what these 8 switches do is basically set the last octet of an IP address. So the subnet is 192.168.1 dot whatever I have these switches set to. So what I'm going to do is change these first 2 switches, so the 1 switch and the 2 switch, to be in the left-hand position. So when my first 2 bits are flipped on, that's going to be the binary representation of 192.168.1.3. So let's zoom out here again. I'm going to turn this controller on now that I have those dip switches set, and you can see it start to boot up. So the next thing I'm going to do is open up a web browser here and then change the IP address settings on my local computer. So let's go to my control panel and set something on the same subnet. So I'll select my local adapter here. And then I'm going to change my IPv4. So let's set my device to be a 192.168.1.10. It could be anything else on that same 192.168.1 network that's not already taken, but I'm going to set it to 10 just for this example. And then close out of all my configuration settings here. So now that my laptop's plugged into that same network, I've got my coupler plugged in as well. I'm going to type in 192.168.1.3 into a web browser, and it's going to pull up the web-based management for that device. So, this is a great place to start. I can start to look at either my Ethernet IP data, my IO data on that coupler, but I can also, make any further IP address changes that I want to here. So you can see, it's telling me that my network is set from the IP address for the dip switches here. If I wanted to change this to something else, maybe not a 192.168.1 network, I could come into TCP/IP, and it's going to ask me for a username and password. By default, username is admin and the password is WAGO. And then I can change more settings here. So what I'm going to do is set this to a static IP address of 192.168.10.3 now. So I'm basically changing it away from my 192.168.1 network and giving it something else that will fit better on my machine network. So let's go ahead and click submit here. Something important to note is that IP address is not going to change until I flip these dip switches back to the 0 setting. So if I go back to my device here, what I can do is power it off. These dip switches are always going to override what the software is telling it to do. So now that I told the software to be on a .10 network, I can change these dip switches back to the right. So now they're all on the right-hand side with the coupler off. I'll power that coupler back on. Once again, back on my computer, I'll go into my network settings to put my PC on that same 10 network. So let's make myself 10.10, close. Okay, so now in a new tab here, let's go to 192.168.10.3. And I can see that IP address is now changed to what I want it to be. It's a static IP address, and I'm ready to go. Thanks for watching.